Hey y'all, I'm Hope. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to my February TBR. I'm currently in the midst of a pretty bad reading slump and I have some big deadlines coming in February, so this is going to be pretty aspirational. These are things I'm hoping I can get to, but I do like to put together a list anyway, even when I'm in a slump, even when I have a lot going on, just because I feel like it helps encourage me to actually pick something up. So I did want to put together a TBR this month anyway, plus there is a readathon I'm very excited about that's taking place in kind of the early to mid-February time span. It's running from the 6th to the 16th, I believe, and that is Jan Agaton's Jante's Inferno readathon, which, one, she always comes up with really cool prompts, two, I'm a sucker for a good pun, and three, I really like Dante's Inferno, so like, I'm so excited for this. I think it's going to be such a cool readathon. It's, I think, 11 days. Very excited for that, so I will be hopefully participating in that. It does overlap with both of my big deadlines, but I'm gonna try and make it work. But I am gonna talk a little bit about that as well. So that's the one thing that I'm like really hopeful I get to outside of the school things. So anyway, let's just dive into the books. I don't have a huge stack this month again. This is just a motivational thing for me. So first I want to start with the stuff I'm going to be reading for class because this is the stuff I will have to read. So I think it'll be interesting to see how I feel about these because neither of these are things I would have picked up on my own. So for one of my classes I'm taking, it's on materialist feminisms. We're going to be reading A Map to the Door of No Return by Dion Brand. I'm having trouble getting a hold of this book. I think I'm probably going to have to get the version from my library. The school library has like an ebook checkout, but only 4 people can like look at it at once. So I think I'm going to try and read it like very early so that I'm kind of done with it and out of the way so that other people can access it. This is a book that's getting a US release in October, and so there's like, you can't order it from Canada, which is where it's published, because of that. I think like Indigo won't ship it to the US right now, and I think it's because of that like publishing deal that's happening in the US for it. So anyway, I can't get a hold of it, but it'll be on screen somewhere. I actually don't know what this is. I don't know if it's fiction or creative nonfiction or just nonfiction, but I think it's going to be interesting because this is for a class taught by a professor who always picks really interesting things to read. I've taken one other class with her that was an undergraduate level class, and this is my first time taking a graduate level class with her. And the thing that really struck me in that undergraduate level class was just that we were reading so many things that I would not have picked up on my own, things I didn't even know existed, and so many of them have just really stuck with me, and there's still things that I think about now. So I'm excited to read this. I think it's going to be an interesting experience, if nothing else, and I'm curious to see how I feel about it, especially since I don't really know what it is, but I'll find out. The other thing I'm going to be reading for class is The History of Rasselas, Prince of Abyssinia, which is for my other class, which is on the search for happiness, which we're talking about like the shift in the way happiness was thought of as something that happened in like the afterlife, where you were virtuous and you experienced happiness as a part of like passing on and kind of seeing the divine. That kind of version of happiness, and the shift that happened in the 18th century to what we think of now as happiness as like an emotion that you can feel and something that's like worth pursuing in your like daily life. And so we're talking about that shift and how that is reflected in literature and some of the different ways that authors deal with this question of happiness. So I don't know exactly what to expect here either. I think I've read from Samuel Johnson before, but I'm not 100% certain. And I really don't know anything about this other than I have to read it for class. That's it. This is often true for things I read for class. I just generally don't know what's going on. But I'm curious to see how I feel about it. It sounds like it could be a really interesting story. So that one ought to be, again, an interesting reading experience, but like in a completely different way. So those are the 2 things that I have to read for school. I do also have a couple of things that are kind of school adjacent that I want to try and get to this month that I think will connect well with things that we're talking about in my classes or will be useful in some way in some of my projects. So for one of those, it's Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall, which has been on my shelf for about a year, I think now, or maybe 2. I still have a receipt in here. I could find out how long it's been on my shelf. Probably too long is the answer. What is the date? Yeah, it's been in here since August 2022. It's not quite as bad as I thought. But I have been seeing some of my classmates mentioning this book, and we have like a collaborative annotations thing we have to do every week. And a couple of my classmates have been mentioning Hood Feminism specifically and like finding connections with our class readings with this book. And it's something I've been really wanting to get to for a while now. I've heard so many good things about this book and that it's like a really just like well-written, very accessible nonfiction book on feminism. So I think this is going to be a really good supplement to that class. And then the other one I want to read is for my Search for Happiness class. I want to read The Last Man by Mary Shelley. I've read Frankenstein a couple of times. I'm going to be reading it again for this class. But I want to read this one in part because I'm looking for something that I can write my final project on. But it has to be in like a specific time period and preferably British literature. So I'm struggling to find something that I am interested in that's also from 1650 to 1830 and British literature. I just don't have much on my shelves. I'm also considering Persuasion. I've already read that one, but I'm looking ahead at like the text that we have to read and some of the things that I could do my final project on, and I'm finding that a lot of it is poetry, which I just don't really enjoy. I don't enjoy writing on it. And then the other options are Frankenstein, which I'm currently writing a thesis on, so I don't necessarily want to do that again. And then this History of Rasselas. So it'll kind of depend a little bit on how I feel about this one, but I wanted to give myself a couple of other options. So this is also printed during that correct time period. Very nearly not, because it was published in like 1826. It's very much on the tail end of that time period. But this one is, I think, the earliest dystopian fiction, or one of the earliest pieces of dystopian fiction, and it's about this guy who is the last man. He is one of the last people remaining after, I think, the bubonic plague has like wiped out humanity. So it sounds really interesting, and I'm very curious to see how I feel about this, just because Frankenstein is one of my all-time favorite books. So I'm excited to read something else from Mary Shelley and get a sense of like her later writing. So that I think is going to be a really interesting experience, and possibly a really good book to do my final project on if I get a chance. I will have to run it by the professor, but I think it could be a really interesting text to look at. So that's all the school stuff, and then the only other thing I have on this list that I want to get to that's like deadline related is To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods by Molly X. Chang. I have an arc of this, and it's the arc I want to try and focus on in February. This book doesn't come out until April, but this was one of the books that was affected by the whole Kate Corain scandal. She was one of the authors, or she was one of the debut authors that was affected by the like negative reviews, the 1 stars that Kate Corain was putting on other books. So I do want to go ahead and get my review up, because I suspect I'm really going to like this. It sounds really interesting, and I want to be able to like actually provide a genuine review for this book, for this author too, since she's been impacted by that situation. So, you know, I know I'm just one person, it's just a small thing, but like since this is sitting on my shelf, I would like to go ahead and get to it and just see what it's like. It sounds so much fun. Like, it's a story about a woman she has some sort of magic, I can't remember exactly, but the magic, like, I think reduces her lifespan when she uses it, and she ends up having to, like, strike a bargain with the prince of this colonizing group that have come in and, like, taken over. And so she's, like, torn between trying to save her people and having to, like, work with this guy who is actively, like, colonizing them. So I'm interested to see how I feel about this one, because it just sounds so interesting, and the cover is gorgeous also. I need to look up the name of this illustrator, because this cover is beautiful. So I'm very excited for this one, and I'm having a good time with arcs at the moment. I'm currently reading my arc for The Tainted Cup and having a good time with that, so I think it's going to be a really fun one to pick up. After all of the like deadline stuff, Jante's Inferno, taking place from the 6th to the 16th. I'm so excited for this. I'm only going to be picking up one book for right now, just because I don't know what that week is going to look like for me right now. I have a deadline on the 8th for my thesis and on the 15th for my other assignments, so I don't want to like overload myself. I kind of want to pick as I go, so that, you know, during the readathon I can kind of adjust my reading depending on how things are going. But I did want to go ahead and pick my first book, and this is going to be for circles 9 and 8. One of the rules for the readathon is you can double up, but only with the circle directly above where you're at, and the goal is to escape hell by reading all the way through the prompts. So circle 9 is to read a book set in winter or with snow on the cover, and circle 8 is to read a horror or thriller. So I'm choosing The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz, which is a thriller set in a snowed-in, like, mountain retreat. And I just think it sounds interesting. I've heard that this gets very weird, and people have had very mixed reviews on this, so I want to know how I feel about it. And I think that, if I remember correctly, Books and Lala really likes this. She likes weird fiction, and she really enjoyed this one. If I remember correctly, I might be wrong on that, but I think it sounds interesting at the very least, and I'm so curious to see where I fall on this kind of like 1-star, 5-star spectrum for this, because I've seen just like very drastically different reviews for this book. So I'm excited to pick this one up, and this will be for circles 9 and 8. The other prompts, just so you know them, because I think they're so cool. Circle 7 is to read a vampire book or book with blood on the cover. I anticipate I'll probably pick up a Sookie Stackhouse book for this, because those are like fun and quick and easy to read. Circle 6 is a hot pick, which is a new release or a hyped book. Circle 5 is to read a book with a battle, a war, or a knife to throat enemies. Circle 4 is to read a book that you've paid full price for. Circle 3 is a book with food involved. Circle 2 is any semblance of romance. That's the circle of lust, if I remember correctly. And the circle 1 when you get to limbo and you're like almost out, it's just to read one more book. And that's the only one that you can't double up with anything else. So you do have to read like one more book for that. So I'm so excited for this readathon. It's going to be so much fun. I'm really hopeful that I can get some stuff done because I will be at the end of my thesis revisions there, and I'll be working on some like fairly low stakes assignments, which is one thing I really like about that class is our other assignments are very low stakes so that we can spend more time focusing on like our final projects. I think it's going to be like very doable, but I'm very excited to pick this one up for circles 9 and 8, and I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to read for the other circles. I am kind of considering what is it called? I have it written here. The King's Men, which is the last of the All for the Game books for circle 5 with that knife to throw enemies thing, because there is a lot of like animosity since there's like mafia stuff going on in the background of that series. And I'm also considering reading Guardian by Priest for the Any Semblance of Romance. That was one that I had started and then set aside for now. It was very quick and easy to read. I somehow managed to read 100 pages without realizing it, so I think that that could work really well for the readathon. But I'm really excited for this, and I'm so hopeful that I can make that work around like all my school stuff. The next category I want to talk about is things that will depend entirely on when they actually arrive, because I don't remember the release dates for either of these, but I do try to get to my pre-orders in the month I receive them if I can. And so for February, I'm getting 2, which are What Feasts at Night by T. Kingfisher, which is the second book in her Sworn Soldier series following Alex Easton, who is a soldier in the army for this like fantasy European country. In the first book, which is a Follow the House of Usher retelling, Alex goes and visits their childhood friends and kind of figures out what's going on with them because there's very spooky things happening with their childhood friends. And now in this book, I think Alex is returning to their childhood home, and things are not quite right there, and there's something spooky that is coming out of the woods at night. So I'm very excited for that one. And then the other pre-order I have is The Book of Isle Rien by Martha Wells, which is a bind-up of 2 books she has that are set in the same world. I think they're standalones, but set in the same universe. And this is some of her earlier fantasy work that's being republished, so I'm very excited to give that a try too. The very last thing I have to mention is I have a couple of videos planned that are not too, like, ambitious that I really am hoping to get to because I think they're going to be so fun. First of all, I want to do a kind of spoiler reading vlog of Murder in the Family by Cara Hunter. I've seen a few people do this already and it just looks like so much fun. I've been like putting off watching their videos because I want to do this myself. But this is a like cold case murder mystery that's a mixed media mystery where you're looking at like interviews from the time and all like police documents, but also like new interviews with the people who were involved in the case. And the goal is to try and figure out what happened to this filmmaker's stepfather many years ago. It just sounds like so much fun, and I love something where you can like solve it yourself. So I think it'll be really fun to do a vlog of this one and see if I can actually solve it. And then the other thing I want to do is try out some horror manga. I thought about leaving this for like October, but honestly I'm just kind of in a mood for some horror manga right now. So I'm hopeful to do a video with that. These are just 2 of the ones I have on hand. I'm still kind of finalizing which books I want to read for that. But I've got Phantom Tales of the Night by Matsuri and Killing Stalking by Kugi. So I'm interested to see how I feel about both of those. I'm just wanting to kind of branch out beyond Junji Ito because that's all I've read in terms of horror manga so far. So those are all the books. I'll even pick them up. This isn't too bad of a stack. These are all the books that I'm hopeful I will get to in February. I really don't know what's going to happen right now. I don't know how it's all going to shake out because of school and all of my deadlines and everything. But I'm really hopeful, and I'm hopeful that like having some faster things on my list, like mixed media murder mysteries and horror manga and like a thriller, is gonna help me pick up again and really start reading more because I love reading, and I hate when I get in a slump. It kind of pisses me off because I'm just like, but there's so many things I want to read. Like, got all of these I need to read. So I'm hopeful that getting into some of these like faster paced things will help me kind of get my reading mojo back, basically. So that's all I'm hoping to get to in February, and I would love to know down in the comments below what you're hoping to read in February. I'm so excited to hear about everybody's reading plans, and let me know too if you're going to be participating in Jante's Inferno, because I think it's going to be so much fun. But that being said, that's all I have for you today. I really hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, I hope you'll consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.